Good afternoon, Chair Kelly, members of the board. It's state fair, so we got some rain this weekend. This year's been a challenging water supply year for the Middle Valley, and that's to say the least. And I thought it would be helpful to put the current situation into a historical perspective. And we did find a notice to water users that was issued by the Board of Directors in March of 1954. And this really struck a note with us because this notice could have been issued in March of this year and not changed a single word, and it would have accurately characterized the conditions we were expecting this year. And so I am going to go ahead and read the notice, if that's okay. Notice to water users of Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District. The Board of Directors of Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District believes that it is highly desirable that all of our water users be thoroughly acquainted with the facts regarding probable supply of water which can be expected for the 1954 irrigation season. We therefore make the following statement of facts. First, the Rio Grande Compact, which regulates the use of water along the Rio Grande, prohibits the storage of water in violation of the Rio Grande Compact. Second, there are several thousand acres of Indian lands which own unquestioned prior and paramount water rights. These rights must and will be respected. Third, recent snow surveys and weather predictions indicate a continuation of subnormal amounts of water available from regular stream flow. Although future precipitation might change these conditions materially, we feel that the present situation is sufficiently serious to justify the following conclusion. That is, it is entirely possible that after May 15th or the 15th day of May, or possibly even before, there will be no regular water supply available for agricultural purposes. We therefore recommend extreme caution in the planting of crops and sincerely hope that farmers of this valley will cooperate and put any available water to only the most beneficial and essential use. Issued by order of the Board of Directors, Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District, 3rd day of March, 1954. And we were very struck by the parallels of what they went through in 54 to what we're going through right now. The basin did receive a late May storm system this year that boosted river flows and extended spring runoff longer than anticipated, which meant that limited irrigations predicted by May 15th did not come to pass. But without that storm, however, those conditions would have likely occurred. I read this notice because it's important for us to remember the Middle Valley has been here before, and we should expect to be here again. Without the ability to store native Rio Grande water, which originates in the Rio Grande Basin and is subject to the rules of the Rio Grande Compact, and is the lion's share of the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District's water supply, late season water availability will continue to be unpredictable, particularly in years with below average snowpack and limited monsoon inflows. So I have this hydrograph. I've shown it before, but I think it's important to just push this point home, how important it is for our operations and predictability and late season irrigation supply is native Rio Grande storages. So we have two hydrographs, and I'm going to update this after this year to be 2018 and this year. But since we haven't finished the year, I thought I'd just do it as it is. But the blue line is the flow measured at the USGS Rio Grande Central gauge in both 21 and 2018. And so this red line that is horizontal kind of shows when flows go below this threshold, we're not meeting irrigation demand for all the users within the Middle Valley. And so in 2018, we had a very low snowpack year, but never really went too far below that available supply red threshold line. But in 2021, the snowpack was a little better. You can see there was like actually a spring runoff that moved through the Middle Valley. But we found ourselves in the late summer and fall well below that meeting irrigation demand threshold line. And the difference between those 2 years is that in 2018, there was a great deal of storage available for MRGCD to access. And in 2021, there was none. So I think that it's just important for people to be looking and thinking about how important it is for us to be striving towards improving New Mexico's Rio Grande Compact delivery so we can return to more reliable irrigation deliveries at the end of season, because this is what our future looks like without that. But moving on to current conditions, the La Puente gauge on the Rio Chama, which is upstream the Lobatos gauge on the Rio Grande, which is on the Colorado-New Mexico state line. There's about 20 CFS coming over the state line now. Obviously, we can see it's been lower than that, but 20 CFS is pretty average for what Colorado's been sending us most of the season. They think they've over delivered on what they need to deliver for the year, so they're at 0% curtailment on both the Rio Grande and the Conejos. Moving on to the Rio Chama near La Puente gauge, which is the gauge on the Rio Chama upstream of all the reservoirs. There's about 40 CFS today, and that's not enough water to meet the needs of the users on the Chama. So very little native waters making it into the Middle Valley from the Rio Chama system. Moving down to the Odawi gauge, which is on the main stem of the Rio Grande, downstream of where the Chama falls into the Rio Grande, and it's upstream of Cochiti Reservoir. There's about 240 CFS measured there this morning. I just checked, it's about 260 right now. And that's slightly higher than last week, thanks to some rain inflows that we had this past weekend. You can see there's been a couple of rain spikes over the past couple weeks. Middle Valley inflow below Cochiti Dam is about 320 cubic feet per second, which 32 CFS is San Juan Chama water that's being released to support environmental flows. San Juan Chama water is water that's imported from the San Juan Basin into the Rio Chama through the Bureau of Reclamation San Juan Chama project, and this water is not subject to the rules of the Rio Grande Compact. So for context, meeting agricultural and conveyance demand at this time of year, so we have about 320 CFS coming in. This time of year, we would need more like 700 to meet the needs of Middle Valley farmers and their crops. So inflow is less than half of what irrigators and their crops need today. Current inflows are only slightly above the calculated prior and paramount demand, which is the amount of water that's required to meet the needs of the priority lands of the 6 Middle Rio Grande pueblos. When inflows into the Middle Valley fall below that calculated prior and paramount demand, MRGCD goes into prior and paramount only operations, which means that all non-pueblo irrigation deliveries upstream of Isleta Pueblo must be curtailed until the inflows again exceed that calculated demand. So we're a little bit above that right now. So we have some limited non-pueblo irrigation deliveries happening upstream. And Mr. Martinez will go into more detail about that. There has also been some rain inflow this weekend downstream of Cochiti, which has added to the available supply that's coming in to the Middle Valley. These inflows downstream of Cochiti tend to be short-lived and can be quite challenging to manage, but Mr. Martinez's team has been working to distribute this water equitably to users as they occur. Recent rain inflows to the river have increased supply, but are not to the level required to meet full agricultural and conveyance demand in the Middle Valley. Irrigators should continue to expect extended periods between deliveries. Looking ahead, I expect inflows to decline in the coming days. However, there is some rain in the forecast later in the week, Thursday and Friday. Things look pretty good up north. So this could provide another temporary boost to available supply. The seasonal outlook indicates that we should expect warmer and drier than average conditions through November. The NOAA Climate Prediction Center, they're forecasting a brief period of La Nina conditions in the fall and early winter. And La Nina typically means warmer and drier conditions for the American Southwest. This is not always true, but it's kind of a good indicator of what we think the winter could be like this year. So just as a final reminder, irrigation season is starting to wind down as we head into fall, but it's important that the Middle Valley irrigators understand that available water supply will continue to be limited without additional rain inflows. And I hope that farmers keep that in mind as they start to contemplate their fall plans. With that, I will encourage everyone to pray for rain, and I will stand for questions.
And before the board asks a question, I didn't hear this, so just for clarification, who is releasing San Juan Chama water right now?
It's the Bureau of Reclamation has a pot of San Juan Chama water that they're releasing for minnow flows. And I think there's a couple, like about 2.5 CFS leased by Audubon as well. And the Bureau of Reclamation is actually forecasted to be out of their San Juan Chama water by, I think, by the end of September, I think before the end of September. So there won't be any other significant inflow from environmental purposes into the Middle Valley once that's gone.
Thank you. I just wanted to make it clear that MRGCD has used its San Juan Chama water. All of ours is spent. It is not MRGCD releasing San Juan Chama water for those environmental purposes.
Thank you for that clarification.